Hey, I wanted to do a second video because I'm waiting for my clothes to dry in the laundry so I can go to the gym. And I'm thinking about stuff. So I'm obviously thinking a lot about hydrogen because, you know, I'm tied to the wall because I'm drinking hydrogen nonstop. Um, yeah. So I was obviously hydrogen has been in my sights in the past, just not medicinally. As a battery for renewable, for transportation. I kind of lost interest in hydrogen when I kind of recognized its logistical limitation as a transportation fuel. Um, there's some work done with some captured hydrogen pellets that were supposed to be like a drop-in quasi like pumpable fuel that they were working on in England, but it's just it didn't feel right after I found out about methanol fuel cells. When I found out methanol, basically you can make a fuel cell for a lot of different fuels, and methanol is clean burning enough where it's certainly viable, and energy density and exhaust and when you get into the fuel cell side of methanol, it really struck me as limitless as far as a transportation fuel alternative. So that was kind of the nail in the coffin for hydrogen as a transportation fuel. But one thing that I did recognize, besides that logistical barrier about hydrogen, is that its potential to be carbon negative, and that really is dependent on where the hydrogen is sourced and um, how it's made. Obviously, if it's coming from renewables, it's a battery. We're not going to call it a fuel source. Um, the fuel source is the renewable. It's a long-term battery option, but it has its efficiency losses in its uh, chemical exchange. So the efficiency isn't there for short-term storage, but because of the internal resistance of batteries, um, the long-term storage is there. But as a fuel, sourcing it from methane, it is very attractive because we have plenty of methane. And if you extract the hydrogen from the methane cleanly, which I believe is possible with. Uh, I haven't looked into it quite some time, so I'm sure the technology has changed. But there was some semi permeable membrane technology. But what I found really interesting was a very simple, very hot bath of molten aluminum that would essentially crack the hydrogen um, by bubbling it up in much the same way that the hydrogen is bubbled up through here. You know, you introduce the methane gas below its flash point, under pressure, in tiny orifices and a pipe beneath molten aluminum, and bubble it up. And as it's exposed to approximately 800 degrees Celsius, um, the carbon is cracked out of the methane molecule, and what bubbles out of the top is essentially carbon and um, and hydrogen. So that's potentially, you know, depending on how that is managed, you can do it perfect. Nobody does it perfect, but it could be done perfect, I believe, with very little exhaust, um, you're heating your molten aluminum with a nuclear reactor, you're not heating it with a coal plant. A lot of things have to fall in line for this to be even remotely true. But once you've achieved clean hydrogen, and then your fuel cell creates energy out of it, your exhaust is pure water vapor. Well, that pure water vapor has a, you know, biradical oxygen molecule that is semi-reactive itself. So it immediately wants to react with carbon dioxide and form a carbonic acid. It's the first thing pure water, pure distilled water wants to do. It wants to pull carbon dioxide out of the air, or your bloodstream or whatever, and form a very mild, uh, water, acidic water. That's a carbon negative fuel cycle. The problem is, the truth on the ground is it's not. The source of the hydrogen is never perfectly green, and the refining process is never perfectly green. It's actually usually quite dirty. So it just logistically lost um, favor as kind of an energy policy uh, bullet point with me personally. But I still recognize that if done perfectly, it is a carbon negative uh, process, carbon negative fuel cycle.